this is Linda Cohn from ESPN, and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
The ML Sports Platter, back with you all over the major platforms like Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, Apple, you name it. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review, all a part of the Brawl Network. Hit me on Twitter, at Mike L Sports, and at Network Brawl as well. You can go ahead and download and subscribe to all of our terrific shows, and the content is awesome with guests and a wide range of teams covered in sports. We are brought to you by Bryant and Stratton College, Stanley Law Offices, and Brian Conboy of Mass Mutual, New York State. Tax-efficient retirement planning today with Brian Conboy. Advisors.massmutual.com. Go ahead and give Brian a call. Find him on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well. We're super happy with our financial future as we went with Brian as well. Brian Conboy, advisors.massmutual.com, the official financial advisor of the ML Sports Platter. Super excited to bring onto the program Pete Croatto. You can get him on Twitter, at Pete Croatto. From Hangtime to Primetime, it is out now. Major bookstores, Amazon.com, anywhere online where books are sold. Business, entertainment, and the birth of the modern-day NBA. Pete, welcome in. Thanks so much for a few minutes. Congrats on the book.
Great to be here, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So in this book, From Hangtime to Primetime, Business, Entertainment, and the Birth of the Modern Day NBA, when do you think it actually happened? You know, that basically your title in the book, when did that specific time happen for the NBA?
Ooh, you know what? That's a good question, and I think, in my opinion, it's Marvin Gaye's national anthem at the 1983 NBA All-Star Game. For your listeners who may not be aware of the significance of that, back in '83, the All-Star Game in Los Angeles, Marvin Gaye, the R&B legend, delivered this off the charts, off the wall rendition of the national anthem, which, as I describe in the book, is basically, the Star Spangled Banner as baby-making music. I mean, it is just an unbelievable rendition, and that to me is the moment when the NBA crossed over into becoming something more than just a basketball league that had some mild interest from hardcore fans. It became about the league at that point really became focused on entertainment and becoming about delivering a product that was going to be enjoyable to a wide swath of people. So I think that '83 anthem, to me, that's the line between the old NBA and the new NBA.
So it's interesting because in the 80s, I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, basically. I was born in 79. I'm 41. And I got into the NBA. It was very, very simple. It was Magic against Bird and Michael Jordan. Yeah. Those were the three guys. My dad was a old-time Celtics fan, going back to the Arbach, Russell, Havlicek, Cousy days. Yeah. Casey Jones and that group. So I started to get into that rivalry a little bit, but again, I was pulled, like so many youngsters were, to Jordan more. So I ask you this question. Obviously, a lot of the business, the entertainment, the modern-day NBA, we know Magic and Bird, they went from the college scene in that championship game and then into the NBA and technically saved the NBA from, the dark days and the drugs and all the stuff, the bad product and teams wanting to move and empty arenas. They saved it. Then Jordan kind of took the torch more from there, once he kind of finally got out of their limelight a little bit, and then Jordan was obviously the guy. So here's the question I have.
Yeah.
What does the NBA look like if there's no Magic, Bird to that level and just the Jordan takeoff? And what's it look like if it's just Jordan?
Well, I think it's going to be okay. I think the NBA winds up being okay. I think it would just. I think acceptance or mainstream acceptance would have taken a little bit longer, because here's the thing. With Magic and with Magic and Larry, you not only have this built-in rivalry, and as you mentioned earlier, you have this rivalry that has an audience, a large audience that saw them go head-to-head in that '79 men's championship college game. That you have that brings in that audience. But what's better, what really makes Magic and Larry such an amazing storyline is a couple of things. First, they're natural rivals. They're natural rivals. One's black, one's white. One plays for, one plays for the Lakers, which and the other plays for the Celtics, which are arguably the NBA's two franchise teams. The two teams that have the starriest histories. They're from opposite coasts, and they're also very much. They're also very much, one's white, one's black. All these things align to make for a perfect storyline. But what's more important about that is at a time when the NBA was when appreciating basketball was more about the team game, when that really mattered a lot more. Here were two players that were transcendent talents, but they were also team first players. Magic and Larry were really just great facilitators, and I think that meant a lot to audiences beyond just kids like yourself who saw those two and saw great players. But for old-time fans, those two players that not only mastered the fundamentals but made their teams better, that meant you got cross-generational audiences. So, like, your dad could watch those games and enjoy it, or your grandfather could watch those games and enjoy them. But so could, like, a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old. But I think what Magic and Larry did was that they made the transition to Jordan a lot easier. I think what would have happened if you just go with Jordan is that there would still be that rocky road of, oh, well, he's an individual player. Oh, he only cares about his own stats. Without Bird and Magic, without Bird and Magic, Jordan's acceptance is a lot harder to take because he's such an individual talent. However, I think once he starts to win those championships and become more of a team player, then you see that mainstream acceptance. Then you see the traditional fans who see a black ball player and see and automatically go to a handful of stereotypes. That starts to fade away a little bit, and you have, I think, the NBA's renaissance start. So a long answer to your question, the NBA's renaissance probably starts about 10 years after it started. So probably instead of 79 with Magic and Larry, maybe starts around 89, 90.
So the entertainment, business part of it, I mean, obviously we know sports, they're a business and they are entertainment, and the birth of the modern NBA certainly brings those two things to the forefront, there's no doubt. How did the business side and the basketball product, how did those two things relate to each other, and how did the entertainment part and the basketball product relate to each other?
They're all intertwined because the NBA, specifically David Stern, the former NBA commissioner, realized that in order to get people into basketball, they had to market individual players. They couldn't market the Celtics or the Knicks or the Lakers. They had to market individual players. And the stroke of luck was that the players that they marketed, and we just mentioned three of them: Bird, Magic, and Jordan. They were empirically great players. They were players that had style. They had showmanship to them, and that was really what saved. I think that was one aspect that saved the NBA was David Stern and his cohorts realized, like, hey, you know what? We have some of the best athletes in the world, and let's market these. Let's market what makes these players great. Let's market their abilities. And then with Jordan especially, it became about let's market just what a special person he is from a superficial perspective. Let's market that smile. Let's market the fact that he's an attractive dude. Let's take these things and make this into almost a Hollywood product. Because here's the thing: if you think about how movies were marketed as the 70s went on to the 80s and 90s, they were marketed around stars. For a lot of the time, like Eddie Murphy and Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks. It was the NBA kind of took a page from that. They went with stars, and they realized that the stars were what was going to make the league special and what was going to get casual fans interested. So really the entertainment and the business side went hand in hand, and a lot of that had to do with David Stern realizing that, you know what, we can't just have a a product that is going to be only for basketball purists and only for hardcore basketball fans. We need to get the people that are semi-curious about basketball really interested in the game, and you do that by marketing individuals, and not only in the game coverage, but also in the ads. You know, you come up with NBA It's Fantastic ads, and you market the dunks and the great passes and the good time that you'll have at the game and the bloopers. So it really, everything that you just mentioned worked hand in hand. It really was a three-pronged attack that kind of merged together splendidly. Is
David Stern the greatest commissioner in sports history?
Yes, I agree. I agree with that. I 100% believe in that, because he took a game that was very much maligned by the American public, and he turned it into an international, a game that's recognized and played around the world. And you know, I'm sure some listeners will say, "Oh, well, it has to be Pete Rozelle." Well, yeah, I mean, you could say that, but Pete Rozelle was dealing with a product that was embraced by the American public. I mean, the NFL was has always been sort of part of football, I should say, has always been part of America's, sporting life. But with the NBA, you're looking at something that really had a bad reputation going into the early 1980s. And David Stern, by dint of his passion for the game and his ability as a marketer, made the game palatable and enjoyable, and turned on millions of fans, not only in the U.S. but worldwide, to the NBA. And for those reasons, I think he's the greatest sports commissioner of all time.
Pete Croatto, our guest here, of course, at Pete Croatto on Twitter. It is out, major bookstores, online where books are sold, from Hangtime to Primetime, business, entertainment, and the birth of the modern-day NBA. And, of course, television, you need that, right, Pete? And so how deep do you get into the personality-driven coverage of key players, right? CBS, NBC, etc., featuring those rivalries, the Celtics and the Lakers, the Pistons and Bulls, on and on it went. TV explodes right at the exact right time in this league.
No, I go into that in great detail. And to me, television is the unsung, one of the unsung heroes of this book, and it works well. It also ties into what we mentioned before about the marketing and entertainment and the business side of it. CBS Sports was not happy to renew the NBA's contract back in 1978, and by the time the contract was renewed in 1982, the NBA was really a non-entity with CBS Sports. They had, and CBS Sports at that time had pretty much every major sport. Had golf, had tennis, had football, you name it. But thanks to a gentleman named Ted Shaker, who was named the executive producer of the NBA and CBS, and this is a gig that he was pretty much just given on a whim. I mean, he didn't lobby for it. He was somebody who was not itching for this gig. It was almost like, here, we don't have anyone else who wants this, take it. And thanks to Ted Shaker and his crew, which included folks like Sandy Grossman, the legendary director, and on-air talent like Tommy Heinsohn and Pat O'Brien and Brent Musburger, they turned the games into entertainment. They made it about the players. They brought you storylines that made you want to stick around and watch the game. And they brought also production techniques and camera work that shook the game from its moorings. It was no longer just, okay, Scott Woodman hits a 15-foot jump shot. Let's see the ball go through the hoop. Now you saw faces. You saw emotions. You saw Larry Bird wave a towel at the end of the bench during the 84 finals. CBS did so much to help the game, help the NBA become an entertainment property. So much so that when the NBA the NBA's television rights were landed with NBC Sports in 1990, NBA executives actually took notes about what they wanted from CBS's coverage to NBC Sports, saying this is how we want the games shown. This is how we want the games profiled. They were that enamored with how CBS Sports covered the game. And then you throw in the rise of local television networks like MSG and Sports Channel. Those games also brought more games, more highlights to couch-bound teens and youth like myself who just savored every minute of it.
Why does Dr. J get forgotten in all this sometimes?
It's time, and you're seeing that now with Michael Jordan. I think if you talk to a 13-year-old about Michael Jordan, that 13-year-old will tell you that they know him from his shoes, his clothing, his apparel line, or Space Jam,
or The Last Dance,
or The Last Dance, right? Yeah. Again, which was just we were all awesome. Housebound. We needed somebody to watch, so there it was.
Right.
Time makes mortals of everyone, and Dr. J is a really good example of that because I write about this in the book. He was really the NBA's first ambassador. He was somebody who really was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan. He was somebody who had all of the television ready attributes, and he was a winner. And that made him a perfect star for the NBA. But again, this was Dr. J's heyday was in the 1970s and the 1980s, and we have very, very short memories. I know you're a baseball fan. I'm a baseball fan too. The Mets were in the World Series in 2015. That feels like 35 years ago.
When they actually were in the World Series another time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very much. So time really is, and time makes mortals of us all, especially now where we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. Everything moves so much more quickly than it did even 10 years ago. So a great player like Dr. J, or even to a lesser extent, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, George Gervin, they're great players. They're players that had historical importance, but in today's media landscape, it's all about what have you done for me lately. And if you don't fall into that criteria, you are going to be swept under the rug. And it's greatly unfair to Dr. J because he really was a pioneer. And Elgin Baylor too just passed away. But again, we have very short attention spans.
What do you think of the game today?
I love the game. I am somebody who, I have my wife and I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I work from home, and she has a very busy life of her own and a career. My wife, not my 4-year-old daughter, she's cool, but we have very busy lives, and we're so I don't have much time to watch the game in depth as I'd like to. But I tell you what, though, Mike, I mean, there's nothing more satisfying to me than to sit down, 8:30, 9 o'clock, and just sit and watch a basketball game. It is for a number of reasons. One, the athleticism, the combination of athletic ability plus smarts is stunning. I mean, just to sit and watch any game, there's always something that sticks out as incredible or as noteworthy, even if it's a terrible game to bottom of the division dwellers going at it. These are the best athletes in the world, and to see someone do something new is such a pleasure. I mean, I'm not really. I used to be a Knicks fan, and then before James Dolan crushed my dreams into a fine powder. But I'm now sort of an NBA polymath or polyglot. Like I can watch any game and get something out of it. I can watch Steph Curry turn the long distance game into something that's sexy and absolutely highlight worthy. I can watch Giannis, redefine what it means to be 6'11". I can watch Kyrie Irving treat a defender like he's on ice skates. The game to me is just I love watching it. It is to me such great television. And on top of that, the announcers and the side by side people and the people that deliver the games, they're tremendous. I mean, Hubie Brown could call two kittens battling over a ball of yarn, and I'd find it captivating. Mike Breen's a wonderful announcer. There is so much to enjoy, and I'm too old, and I have too little time left on this earth to complain about how the game used to be or about, back in my day. I just want to watch a good game, and whenever I turn on ESPN or MSG or Yes, I find something that's worth my time, and that to me is the value and the joy that I get from the NBA now.
From Hangtime to Primetime, business, entertainment, and the birth of the modern day NBA online, Amazon.com. Books are sold both online and, of course, in bookstores. Go grab it. Terrific stuff here with Pete Croatto. A couple more with you here
Sure.
In terms of the David Stern NBA and, eventually the Jordan just phenomenon and the dream team, all of that happening in television, of course. But the game went global. I mean, the game went really global, as you alluded to earlier. What area of the world do you think was the most, now that we look back on it, right? I mean, it's been what, 20 something years or whatever, since the 28 years, I guess it is, since the Dream Team. 28, 29 years. That's crazy. 3 decades almost.
Nuts.
It's nuts. It really is. But what area do you think, whether it was, later on in China with Yao Ming, or was it the Barcelona thing with the Dream Team? Or when you look back on it, what international area, what global place where the NBA, took a dive into, which one do you think ended up being the most beneficial long term for where we are now?
That's a really good question. It's so hard to say, because I think that narrative is still being written. Because it's only a matter of time before a great player emerges from some corner of the world, and
right, some dude from Norway just shows up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to say. I mean, it's back in 2001, 2002, it was China, because Yao Ming was such a phenomenon here, and then now recently it seems to be Greece with Giannis and I guess Cameroon and Africa with Joel Embiid. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of how widespread this game is now, is that any place in the world can get NBA coverage, whether it's on your phone, your computer, your satellite dish, wherever. So any player that becomes a superstar now brings in untold millions of fans, and it's hard to figure out where the next great superstar is going to be. I mean, I would have, if we talked about this 20 years ago, I would have said Yao Ming, because look at China. But who knows? Maybe someone comes from India, and that player becomes a worldwide sensation. So it's really hard to say, but that just goes to show you how widespread and how masterful the NBA the NBA's immersion in the international sporting scene is. I mean, there's because anytime a player goes goes off, so to speak, there is there's a to do in that player's nation, and that can spread like wildfire across the globe. So it's to be determined.
And you look at Ujiri too. The president of the Raptors.
Yeah.
There's a Nigerian Canadian professional executive. So you're going global in a couple different places. This guy has got an unbelievable pedigree, and now we have the game. Is just so global, even in the front office. And so that means, in my opinion, that because those backgrounds exist, that means that they're more prone to look outside the United States for talent. Without a doubt. And so maybe it takes one more guy like him to come in, and then we'll get somebody from a land unknown as we continue this thing. It's become so international, so global. The phenomenon of hoops and how it grew. It's absolutely mind-boggling looking back on it now, and how they did it, and how they built it, and Stern and all the stuff that we've been talking about to get to this point for sure. What do you hope people say about the book when they get done with it?
Well, first of all, I hope that they enjoyed the book. I think that to me is the minimum qualifier here. I want someone to read to because again, when you're asking someone to read your book, you're asking them to give up their time, and that's tremendously valuable, especially now when we're battling a pandemic and no one's life is steady in any sense. So I do hope that that a person who reads this book enjoys it. That's my main goal. But I do hope that someone who reads this book, I hope they get a couple more things out of it. I hope that they have a better appreciation for where the NBA was and where it is now. That again, I think there's a tendency that we wake up and we think, well, things have always been this way. Whether it's no matter what it is, but there's a history behind everything that we see, and the NBA is no different. The NBA did not become this global financial entertainment and cultural behemoth, overnight. It didn't just happen this way. There are many people, some prominent, many not so prominent, who nurtured and worked and innovated, if I can use that word, to get the NBA where it was. So I hope that people who read this book, A, get a better appreciation for the NBA and where it's been. B, we'll look up some of the players who are mentioned in this book, some of the great writers that are mentioned in this book. Folks like Bob Ryan, Jack McMullen, Harvey Arden. They've written great books about the NBA's past. Elgin Baylor's autobiography is wonderful. So I just hope that they're able to get an understanding of how the NBA got to where it is, and maybe want to learn more about it. And if they want to, maybe in a perfect world, they write their own book, or they write their own blog post, or they write their own article, and maybe share that love, because this game has a wonderful history, and and it's been my honor and privilege to be able to tell a little bit about it.
Yeah, Jack McCallum and Bob Ryan and those guys, yep. So terrific. I've had a lot of those guys on as well. I wanted to finish by hitting on one more thing.
Sure.
As time goes on, obviously your appreciation for things, it grows. Mm-hmm. And in sports, it's wild in my lifetime. Sure, I envy people who saw the 50s baseball scene in New York with the Dodgers, Giants, and Yankees, and I envy people who were there and alive for the Miracle on Ice, or for Ollie Frazier, or for Super Bowl III, or Jim Brown running the football. I mean, God, go on and on and on. But in my lifetime, even at 41,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I've lived through Tiger, Jordan, Gretzky, Brady, the Djokovic-Nadal-Federer trio, yeah. Serena Williams, Pete Sampras and Agassi, Alexander Ovechkin. I mean, I've seen. This has been a pretty darn good 4 decades here. Okay, so that leads me into this.
Sure.
I would love to hear who's on yours, but my NBA all-time team by position historically is Magic at point guard, Jordan at the 2. I've got LeBron at the 3. I have Tim Duncan at the 4, and then I have Bill Russell at center. My lifetime one, though, it's not that much different. It's actually 4 or 5 guys are still on the roster, which then adds even more to the previous point of, holy cow, look what era we're living in. The only change would be probably, it has to be at center because I didn't live through Bill Russell.
Right.
I probably would put, a lot of people might go Shaq there. I think I would probably go Hakeem Olajuwon. I just think he's one of the most underrated players of all time. But I guess two-parter to close off of all that, Pete, is who are on your all-time teams maybe, and then do you think about that man, the era and what I've seen, it's as good as any one in the history of this in any sport with these guys.
Yeah. I'll answer your second question first. I think that's a really good point. One of my pet peeves is, and I alluded to this earlier, a giant pet peeve of mine is folks that complain about, in the good old days it was so much better, and all the players today, in any sport, and I think that's just such garbage. There's greatness. I'm 43, and I lived through all those athletes. I've seen Serena Williams, ace, serve up aces nonstop. I saw Jordan, torture the Knicks for springs in my youth. this whole nonsense of it's never going to get any better or was better back then. I think it's absolute bunk. I really do. And just watching it, just watch a few NBA games, and you'll find that, or watch Tom Brady throw a football. I mean, it's crazy. But going back to my teams, it's hard to say. I mean, I guess if you're talking about folks that I live my teams that I historical versus anecdotal teams. That's a good question. Anecdotal, again, I'm going to go. Let's see. Point guard, let's go Magic. Shooting guard, we'll go Jordan. Even though I grew up a Knicks fan, it pains me to put Jordan on that list.
See, I had Bird at the 3 for a long time. It was hard. Yeah. It was hard for me to move him out of there, even knowing how elite LeBron is and has been, and probably was the most hyped athlete of all time because of the media world that we live in, high school to the pros, all that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, Jay-Z, for God's sakes, got turned away at one of his games, so...
Yeah, crazy.
So eventually I saw beyond the Bird thing. It pained me to do it, but I put LeBron there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to throw in with LeBron. What's amazing about him is his longevity.
Yes.
Yep. I mean, he's had a couple of injury-riddled seasons over the last 5 years, but I mean, to be at his level at 35, 36,
it's absurd.
And it is unreal. And also to lead the league in assists last year when he was, 35, 34 for the first time?
Yeah, and he's only played 4 positions during his career, right?
Yeah, and just the way that he plays the game, I think he would hold up in any any era.
Yep.
So guards, I'll do Magic and Michael. Center, I didn't really see him play. I saw him play at the end of his career, but to me, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was. You know what? Yeah, I'll do Kareem.
You know what? I'm a moron. I would go him as well. I took Olajuwon, but I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, because I grew up into that Lakers Celtics. I remember a lot of that as a little kid. There was still a lot going on there. 86, 87, 88, 89. I would Kareem should be there for sure for me too.
So I'll put Kareem center and tell you what, because and again, if you gave me an hour and a half, I would still probably be compiling this list. I'll put Olajuwon at the Olajuwon at the power forward. I'll put LeBron at the small forward. So that's my 5 on the anecdotal side. All time, let's see. Point. Let's stick.
You have to keep Magic and Michael, right?
That's the thing. Yeah. Like I can't. I was going to say, well, I can go like Kuzi or
no way.
That or Jerry West. That's nuts. I'm going to go. I'll keep Magic and Michael at the guards. Center, I'm going to go with Bill Russell because he's the greatest champion in NBA history, and I think he could also control the game with defense. I think people forget just how dominant he was, and he wasn't a scorer. He was somebody who, through playmaking, he was a great passer, leadership, and defense, won 11 NBA championships, and 2 of them as a coach. So let's put Bill at the center. At the forwards, let's see. You know what? Power forward. That's a good question.
Because you got Duncan, you got Malone, you got Baylor, you've got. I mean, there's some.
I'm going to put Elgin in there.
I figured you would. Yeah.
Let me put Elgin there because I think people forget how good he was. I mean, he's somebody who, without Elgin Baylor, you don't have the modern day NBA. You don't have.
Oh, there's no positionless basketball. I mean,
yeah, exactly right. And he was somebody who was 6'5" and did everything, rebounded, passed. So let's put Elgin at the small forward. Sorry, LeBron. And you know what? Because my wife's from Philly, let me put Moses Malone at the power forward for a little bit more rebounding. So that's a good starting 5. If you call me in 2 hours, I'll probably have a different starting 5. But let's end it there because I could do this all day.
No doubt, and I bet you that the next time you change, you might even insert Oscar Robertson, a guy who a lot of people. People I talk to are like, there's no way I would leave the Big O off of my roster, and people who are 75, 80 have told me that, and they've seen everybody. I mean,
Oscar, yeah. And again, that's what I talked about with time. is that we get so seduced by, and we get so seduced about by who's visible, and all those guys I mentioned, they're all visible in some way. And Oscar, he's alive and he has things that he does. He wrote a terrific autobiography that came out about 10 years ago that your listeners should check out. But he's somebody who like Kareem was not terribly media friendly. He wasn't somebody who sought publicity. Even now, he's not somebody who's going to hog the spotlight. So, yeah, because they're not in our face all the time, we tend to forget about those guys. But Oscar, again, to average triple-double, first 5 seasons, and, and also you'll have that magical 61-62 season when, you're playing against the best players in the world. Come on. That's a career I'll put that up against anybody's. But, it goes to show you just how quickly we forget, even just in this casual conversation, we forget Oscar Robertson.
Yeah, it's wild. It shows you the elite, and that's why it's funny too when you see a list get thrown around. Like I know Jay Billis did his top 10. I didn't watch the video yet, but a top 10 list of head basketball coaches of all time in college, for example, and. A Syracuse fan, if somebody doesn't hear Jim Boeheim, like, what do you mean? That's absurd. What, but think about this though. You got to get through Wooden and Coach K and Dean Smith and Adolph Rupp, and you got to get through Roy Williams, and you've got to get through Jim Calhoun, and you've got to get through, maybe even a John Thompson as much as Syracuse. So what I'm getting at is it doesn't stop at 4 or 5 here. The upper echelon is big time, and you can be a great anything and still not be Jordan, a great anything and still not be Tiger, a great anything and still not be Wayne Gretzky, and that's it just shows you even too the power of competition and just how hard it is. I even look at these golfers. For these guys to even just stay on tour, to keep their card is remarkably impressive to me, and they're not. Some of these guys don't even sniff majors.
No, yeah, that's the one thing that gets lost in the world of professional athletics. And I don't know if you saw this a few weeks ago, but did you see the clip? I think it was a TikTok or it was a TikTok, I think, of some high school kid challenged Brian Scalabrine to a game of one-on-one.
I didn't see it. No.
Yeah. So anyway, Brian Scalabrine, former Celtic net. So he's been out of the league for 10 years, since 2012. And this high school kid comes up and challenges Brian Scalabrine, who was a bench player, to a game of one-on-one, thinking that he's going to clean Scalabrine's clock. The exact opposite happened. Scalabrine just demolishes this kid. Like, this 18-year-old kid gets demolished by a guy who hasn't played professional ball in almost 10 years. I bring that up because I bring that up for a reason. To make the NBA or any professional sport, you are in the top 1% of the best in that profession, and that percentage might even be high. So it always bothers me when someone says, "Oh, that guy's a scrub. Oh, he's a hack, or she's no good." Oh, really? Like, these are this person who's riding the pine, or who is can't make the cut at the Pathmark Open. They're better than 99.9% of anyone playing that sport, and it just goes to show you just how, and I mention that because it's the line between good and great in any professional sport is so thin. And to me, anybody who makes the pros in any given sport is at the top of their profession. But we treat these men and women like they're they're at the Apollo. Like we're going to boo them off the stage, and that to me is just kind of we kind of lose perspective very quickly. And I think this book kind of brings a little bit of perspective back, because the NBA is more than just one player, more than just David Stern. It's a bunch of people who made the league what it was, and the same could go for any sport. Any competitors, any executives. It takes a village to raise a child.
Well, this was outstanding. Pete Croatto, thank you for coming on. Again, he's the author of the book From Hangtime to Primetime, Business, Entertainment, and the Birth of the Modern Day NBA. Get it at Amazon.com, online where books are sold, and in major bookstores. And follow Pete on Twitter at Pete Croatto. Thanks a lot, Pete.
Mike, my pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by our great friends at the Al and Angus Pub, Ken's Auto Detailing, C&Y Electrical, and Sit Mean Sit Syracuse. The best dog training around, any breed, any dog, any behavior. Sit Mean Sit Syracuse, Greater Central New York. Get your dog trained at Sit Mean Sit Syracuse. Go ahead and visit them online at sitmeansit.com, and of course on Facebook as well. And a big tip of the cap, thank you to our friends over at Western New York OTB. Make sure you get to your local OTB for all of the races this year, all race season. Go place your bets at Western New York OTB. Again, Rochester, Buffalo, your OTBs in Central New York, etc. throughout the state. Get to your local OTB, Western New York OTB, and Batavia Downs Gaming, proud ML Sports Platter sponsors. Hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports. Thanks for listening all over the major platforms. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and that 5-star review is huge as well. Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Deezer, you name it. Get the ML Sports Platter everywhere as a part of the Brawl Network. Thanks again to Pete Croatto. Terrific book that's out. Go get it. It's called Hangtime to Primetime, From Hangtime to Primetime, Business, Entertainment, and the Birth of the Modern Day NBA. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.